Finance Bill 2023 is looking to increase VAT on fuel products from 8% to 15%. Mr. Speaker, as we talk today, the country is not doing very well economically, and there are two issues. Either we tax or we borrow. The budget ceiling, Mr. Speaker, as we talk, is around 9.4 trillion Kenya shillings. And the ceiling that this House, and then I voted during the handshake arrangement, against was 10 trillion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. We are looking at a budget of 3.6 trillion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. Our public debt is no longer sustainable. Therefore, the fact that 8% has been increased to 15% on VAT, Mr. Speaker, is very critical in the growth of the economy. We either choose to go to countries like Canada, Ethiopia, Ethiopia and other countries who have default in terms of payment, in terms of public debt that we have internationally, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the issue of fuel subsidy. Who are these people? Mr. Speaker, as we talk today, there are many companies who are well connected that benefited from fuel subsidy. Mr. Speaker, who are the beneficiaries? Mr. Speaker, when you look, and I remember we censured as CS of Energy in the last session because of misuse and abuse of fuel subsidy, and then, Mr. Speaker, because what you are having is specific petrol stations who are selling fuel like a happy hour, Mr. Speaker, for people who add things more than water, and they were not in a position to tell us who are these, Mr. Speaker. As we talk today, there are many companies that want to be paid because they gave fuel subsidy, Mr. Speaker. That process was abused. Mr. Speaker, any sane economic person, the fuel and unga subsidy should be removed because it was not sustainable, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it behooves all of us, Mr. Speaker, that we cannot survive on subsidy, Mr. Speaker. Look, for example, we better subsidize production over consumption. Because if we are talking about food security, for example, we better give farmers in Nyamira, Mr. Speaker, subsidized fertilizer to produce more of ndizi to be consumed in Nairobi, as opposed as giving unga that is subsidized, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this statement by Senator Amida, with all due respect, of course the committee will dispense with, but in my own opinion, fuel subsidy was abused, Mr. Speaker. The international economists, the IMF, everybody has said you cannot live on subsidy. It is like living on Fulisa. You cannot live on Fulisa, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, when the finance bill, I would have wished to listen to the comments of Senator Amida when the finance bill will come before the floor of the House, because we need to raise our local revenue. We don't raise, we borrow more. We borrow more, the country, Mr. Speaker, will be sold reja like mitumba in some markets, Mr. Speaker. And we don't want, Mr. Speaker, to come here buying a loaf of bread, come with like 10 kilos of 100 shillings, Mr. Speaker, because our currency has been devalued, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I think on a point of information, Mr. Speaker, Senator Amida is doing very well in many things, but I think on this one, I beg to disagree, because fuel subsidy has been abused, and the government under President William Ruto has done very well to remove any form of subsidy and cut down even on this budget, Mr. Speaker. I've seen, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, there are many, and I hate to reply these things, Mr. Speaker, because I've seen our colleagues from the other aisle in Disco Matangas. I'm told there's Disco Matanga. My younger brother, Senator Rafael Chimera, was there describing how Disco Matangas happens is in a better place, or birthday parties or baby showers. Mr. Speaker, we need to be honest to the country in conclusion. There is a misnomer that